G'day, Andrew from Streetneat here again, this time without the rain. Now last week I showed you a little bit on my shrinking disc, and what I want to show you today is some of the other uses that you can use this tool for. This poor old quarter panel, and the same with the one on the other side, I've taken them off the car, so I've unpicked all the spot welds. I put them back onto the car with a series of Tech screws and things, and that holds them in place long enough for me to do what I've got to do. If I need to get it back on the inside, I simply unscrew the panel, take the panel back off, do the dressing and the work that I need to do, then I can put it back on the car and check it. Now the problem is, the HQ has a bit of a recess along the side, and this panel I've now repaired it, so I can't show you the process as such. So what I've done is I've now made this side match the other side. This had a little bit too much suck in on the panel. Now what I did is initially I took the quarter panel off and then run the shrinking disc on the high spot, which was on the inside, so I worked on it from the inside. That wasn't really enough to get the thing to hold its shape because the panel is off the car. When you put the panel back on the car, it pulls it all back into the correct shape. Now the problem I was having was I needed to get that suck in out, but I didn't want it to go all the way down the quarter panel because we still need to have some of this shape in here. So what I've discovered is there's several different ways of panel beating to bring a panel back out full again. Now your traditional method would be to use a slightly crowned dolly. This is one that I've made. This is a horse file that I've made into a slapper many years ago. And normally you would put the dolly behind the panel and you can dress it up. Now, the problem is, as you can see, access is a bit of a problem. So what I've discovered today is just mucking around a bit with the shrinking disc, and I've been using this thing for years, is there are other ways to get this panel to suck out. Now I've used the shrinking disc initially on the inside, as I said. I'll put the panel back on the car, and it hadn't really made a lot of difference. It actually nearly destroyed the panel again. It made it all whoopy and wavy. So what I did is, using a body spoon, and there's all varieties of different body spoons you can use, I've got into the panel, I've put a bit of weight on the area. Now this is where a bit of guesswork becomes involved. You've got to work out where your body spoon is. So all this area was sucked in. And what I was doing, and this is pretty tricky doing this one-handed, I would spin it up and heat up that area. Now what would happen is any pressure that I put on was popping the panel back out. So I progressively worked my way around and with the spoon, and I managed to get the whole thing eventually to come back out. Now part of the secret to getting it to stay there is you've got to be able to read the oil can, read what it's doing. So what you do is you just keep on pushing on it, and you're looking for the outside of where the thing is oil can. So if you push on it here, and there's a big dimple coming in around here, you know it's that area in there that you've got to address. One of the tricky things that you can do with a HQ quarter panel, and most other panels of course, because this has got shape that disappears up into the top, and it's got a nice sturdy ridge down here, what I was able to do was run the shrinking disc down along that curved edge. And what that effectively did is it shrunk this ever so slightly, not enough that you would notice it, and the metal has to go somewhere, so it pulled it up. And the consequence was of all the work that I used pushing on this, plus shrinking up here, got that panel to come up good again. So the shrinking disc is very good for getting the basic shapes and everything right. So, but it's not the be-all and end-all. You're still going to do some hard manual graft afterwards. What I do is I'll then file finish. Now this is a metal file, and I just want to show you the difference between a metal file and a bog file. A metal file has pretty much twice as many teeth. I'm not sure whether you can see or not. Metal file has twice as many teeth as a bog file. That's my bog file. It's pretty rusty. I don't use it. I hate doing bog work. So the metal file is very good for running along the panel, and that will pick up all the highs and lows, the very, very, very minor ones. Now, what you can also do, because the panel's back on the car and you can't get in there easily to you know, dress up the final bits, that's where a body spoon comes in handy again. And basically put a bit of pressure on the panel with the spoon, and you've got to catch the light and you can see where you're pressing. You then run the file over that area and you should be able to see where you're going. And just with gentle pushing and persuasion, you can then bring the panel back up. Now if you go too far with it, that's where this baby comes in handy again. So what I found is, should you actually put a little crease dent, which is quite easy to do with your body spoon, you can end up with a bit of a high spot. Now any time that you push on the metal, it acts like pastry. It's got to go somewhere. So when you hit on it, if you've got a low spot, you can use your dolly and your slapper, or if you do a more localised area, you can use your hammer. Once again, access is a bit of a problem. So what I was able to do was simply very, very carefully work all this panel up and run the file over the panel, and I found the high spots. Then to finish it off, I would run the shrinking disc back over the whole area. Now, just very, very light touches with the shrinking disc, and that will knock down any of the, you know, the real persistent high spots where you've kinked it with the body spoon. The file, it takes a lot of filing to file right through a panel, but if you're not careful, or if you've got a particularly sharp dent upwards and you file it, yeah, you're going to file right through it, and you don't want to do that because then the whole panel becomes junk and you throw it away. But the main thing I wanted to show you is, in summarising, is how I was able to get all this nice tension back into the panel. Now the factory steel is quite soft and it will move around quite easily, and that's the problem when people lean on the car later on, they'll end up denting it, and that's the geese. Anyhow, basically I was able to get all this panel full again, so when the door's closed, it then matches that profile there nicely. Now you've got a hip that starts down here, and it starts here, it fades out into nothing, goes flat, all this is all flat, and then the hip becomes more defined down in here. So hopefully that's just shed a little bit more light on what the shrinking disc can do. Thanks for watching.